closing, I want to say, hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, sweet home Chicago. 224 446.
Hi there, I'm Anita Alvarez. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine. A presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at www.ntnm.org, where you'll find shows from the past 9-10 years approximately. Community policing, we're very big on that, caps24.org. Jewish Chicago will be coming out for the start of early voting. And, if you want to participate in Jewish Chicago, the time is now. I want to thank the initial ad sales are absolutely unbelievable. Somebody bought pages 2 and 3. The back cover got sold right away. Page 5 got bought right away. Pages 6 and 7 are ready to go, probably to one person. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. The hottest race around is the state's attorney's race. And it is my pleasure to introduce you once again to not only the person who's done the best Marty Levinson in the history of Marty Levinsons, but the official endorsed candidate of Marty Levinson. That would be Cook County State's Attorney Anita Alvarez.
Hi, Avi. Thanks for having me.
First of all, my pleasure. Thank you. And I want to thank Sally Daly and Jack and Ed, is it? Pat. I always mess these names up. I'm terrible at names, guys. Sorry. It's Pat O'Donovan and Jack Bedore. Mm-hmm. Okay, got that right at least. For bringing you here today, and hi to Dan Kirk, who may or may not make it. Okay. In any event, we really haven't. I had you on right before this whole Laquan McDonald thing happened.
Yes,
so
I think so, yeah.
We've never really talked about it. I missed by about a week. And I did read what John Cass had to say, and in reading that, it seemed to me that I was going to see the most horrific thing in the history of the world. Somebody dying, of course, is not a nice thing, period. I mean, it just, I wouldn't say it's quite that action-filled. But, I mean, there's a lot of things that strike me here. And, I mean, all this furor and uproar, I like to talk about what it's, some of this has a little bit to do with you, and some of this has nothing to do with you whatsoever. And, unfortunately, it's guys like, it's professional liars. I mean, political strategists like David Axelrod. And, anyway, so getting into the case itself. Now, whatever action the city took in releasing video, not releasing video, that's got nothing to do with your office,
that
does
has
it?
absolutely nothing to do with me. That request was made, obviously, through the city. That was the city handling it. That had nothing to do with my office. And so, the position the city took in releasing the video or not releasing that's all the city, and that's not my office at all. Obviously, we were involved in the investigation with the U.S. Attorney and the FBI.
Right, and the fact is that in part, let me ask you also, do you have to wait for the independent review agency to go over things first before you can get started, or?
Well, I'll describe, I can describe what we did and how that particular case was handled, and kind of in general to talk about, police shooting cases. And Avi, I know you're well aware because you're very involved with the CAPS program. And what the job of a police officer. I must say, being a police officer today is a very, very difficult job to have.
There's a lot of these guys that would tell their kids not to do it.
Right, and I understand it, and we also know that there are officers out there each and every day doing a very professional job. When we
and by the way, I'll also point out that both Sonny and I know Jim Mullen very well, who went on a routine domestic, abuse thing to an apartment, wound up getting shot, and is a quadriplegic for life.
Absolutely. It's an absolute dangerous job, and they put their lives on the line for us each and every day. When you're faced with a police shooting like we saw with Laquan McDonald, just to kind of give you generally how it works. Normally what happens is that IPRA, the Independent Police Review Authority, handles anything that has to do with excessive force. So obviously a police shooting would fall into that category. If an officer is accused of something like, say, a bribery, a theft, something like that, then the internal affairs is who looks for that. So that's kind of two different ways where cases will come to us. When IPRA is involved, and they're the first to start the investigation.
That's the Independent Police Review Agency?
Right, the Independent Police Review Agency. They'll contact us. And what happened in the McDonald case, and I have no problem explaining it, and I know there are many things, as you just hit on it, have been reported. Many of the things are taken out of context and exaggerated, but this is what happened.
I think lied is a better word for
it. I've been the subject of some unflattering allegations.
Really?
And just so I think
you seem like such a nice person. I'm really surprised.
I hope I am. But no, for your listeners, so they understand, the case occurred, the incident occurred, the shooting occurred October 20th of 2014. On November 4th of 2014, so 2 weeks later, we were notified by IPRA about the shooting. My office
So
was.
that's 2 weeks went by before your office even
Yes,
got it.
absolutely. And I have, in my Special Prosecutions Bureau, I have a unit called the Professional Standards Unit, and that's the unit that looks at all cases where a police officer is involved with and accusations of any kind of wrongdoing. So my unit was contacted. We were made aware of the video, and on the 18th of November, we spoke with the FBI. The FBI indicated that they, in fact, wanted a copy of the video from us, and on the 19th of November, we gave that to the FBI. And then I spoke with the United States Attorney and the head of the FBI. And on the 8th of December of 2014, they both came to my office, and I had a meeting with the United States Attorney, Mr. Farden, and Bob Holly, who was then the special agent in charge of the FBI here in Chicago. And it was at that time that we all agreed that we were going to do this as a joint investigation, and we were going to work this case jointly with the FBI, being our investigative partner. Now, normally on cases like this, our investigative partner would not be the FBI, it would be IPRA. They would do all the legwork. They would do all the investigation. They would interview all the witnesses. They would bring us the evidence. I decided, and Zach Farden, that we were going to work with the FBI. And so that investigation began at that time of December of 2014. I wholeheartedly stand firm in my decision to do that, because working with my partners on the federal level, we've done many joint things together. I have utmost respect for the United States Attorney's Office and the FBI. And the FBI brings resources we don't have on the local level. And to have them as your investigative agency is a tremendous plus for me. So we started that investigation. We were working it jointly. Back in April of 2015, we did put out a joint statement, letting everybody know that, yes, we were looking at this video. Yes, we were looking at this particular shooting, and we were doing this together. As the investigation went on, and things take time, one of the things that I think your viewers need to understand, when you're looking at an allegation of an officer, being unjustified in shooting someone, they're more complex. These cases are much more complex. It's not the same as one civilian, one gang member shooting another. Not at all. And why is that? Well, because officers do have the right to use force. And so when you are looking at a police shooting, there's a lot of things you have to do. You have to know, number one, you have to know that use of force model. You have to know the relevant case law from the United States Supreme Court that governs the area of law that covers the use of force. You have to be meticulous in your investigation because you don't want to miss anything. You want to build the best case that you can. You want to get the best evidence that you can. There's another controlling area of case law that's called, the case is called Garrity, and I know this is kind of inside baseball, but it's important.
I like inside baseball. This is good.
It's important because the Garrity case law tells us that if a police officer is called in and he is compelled to give a statement, which happens routinely because many of these things are looked at from the department administratively, and we're looking at something for criminal charges, two separate avenues here. But if an officer gives a statement administratively, he's compelled to give. Me, as the prosecutor, I can't know what that statement is. I can't know what he says, because if I do and I indict him, my indictment can be dismissed.
Wow.
So my assistants are specially trained when we're looking at these cases to make sure we don't make any mistakes, to make sure that you're not going to create something that you're eventually going to lose. So we have to be very careful in our investigations. And if you look across the country, and there was a recent article in the Washington Post that talked about, they looked at police shootings for the last 10 years, from 2005 to 2015. And they found only 55 police officers were charged with something.
I saw that.
And over only 22 of them have already been found not guilty. 11 have been found guilty. The others are pending. But what else that told us was that the average length of time to investigate a police shooting was 260 days.
261.
261. There you go.
Sorry.
No, you're right. 261. So it takes a long time, and that's every prosecutor across the country will tell you. They take your time to make sure you get it right.
You know, this is exactly the area. I'm glad you said that, because this is I was going to bring up exactly the same thing. 206. Now, people are complaining like crazy about this 400
Exactly.
days.
Right.
Like, you should be able to look at this tape and indict this guy for first-degree murder right away.
Right. Right.
Okay, so 55 cases in the last 10 years. A police officer gets indicted for first-degree murder. 11 convictions. Average length of time, 261 days. If you were, by the same token, to look presently at the case in Baltimore that just went down, which many people said at the time was rushed into action far before it was ready, state's attorneys from other cities also said you could barely do the paperwork in the time it took for the new state's attorney to indict.
Right.
You know, that case is already out on the street. You know, for all the justice, so to speak, justice that they got in getting that indictment so fast, the guy is scot-free. Now, I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm not saying he's not guilty. Nothing like that at all. I'm just saying that the results are the lynch mob mentality, and this is a lynch mob mentality, very much so. You know, people don't realize that many of these people, and I know this from both political sources as well as police sources, many of these demonstrators, you know, on this case in the Black Lives Matter and trying to tie State's Attorney Alvarez to Emanuel, these are paid professional protesters. You pay them money, they will do whatever it is you want them to do. Why is it that 95 people should get a front page headline? Because they know how to manipulate the press. And the fact is, if you ask people in the know, 98% of them will tell you that Preckwinkle the Periwinkle, you know, is the person who's behind all this stuff. And there's no question. I mean, you take a look at those statements. You look at what she's made, what she's done, the fact that she put in Kim Foxx to run against Anita Alvarez. It's like, with all due respect, yeah, she spent more time in the office than Moore, but she's never handled a felony case in her life. What she is qualified to do is, yeah, she can be an executive, a top assistant to Preckwinkle. That means she does have skills, the same way that Scott the Slanderer Sysak has amazing skills too when it comes to dirtying people up, which she's being a victim of right now, as a matter of fact. But let's get back down to what's reality here. So, I know you long enough now, and this is about 8 years,
Right.
Since we've actually met.
Absolutely.
And you've done your first Marty Levinson.
I did.
And even before the Big Scissors one, it was kind of cool.
That was fun.
You really put your energy into it. The fact of the matter is, you've always been methodical in what you've done, okay? You take your time, you think things over, you don't come here, you don't make rash statements. I've had people, Friday night I was by one of my best friends for dinner. Mm-hmm. He was very unhappy with you.
Oh.
Very unhappy. He says, politically, you're not handling this well at all. And I try to make the point to him, that's one of her problems in this case, because she's a professional prosecutor.
Right.
She's not a politician, and she's never pretended to be a politician or gone after something. And you know what? I'm so sick of you people talking about this judge thing that she was supposed to be going for.
Oh,
this is
that was never true.
This is Preckwinkle, Periwinkle, Sysak, the whole that whole cabal of evil, that brings stuff like this. I mean, I could bring up more, but we've got too many good things, too many interesting things.
Well,
to talk
I
about.
think what's important for the viewers to know is that, and you touched on it with the Baltimore thing, is that what is justice, Avi? Justice isn't just making an arrest, right? It's not. That's not justice. Justice will be served when, at the time at the end of the trial, when the offender is held accountable for his actions. That's what we're seeking, and that's what our goal is, to make sure that we put the best case together possible with the strongest evidence. Because the other thing we do know is that, and this is across the country, convicting a police officer on a misconduct case, on any kind of a case, is a high burden. And so, you want to make sure that you get the best evidence. And I think...
Yeah, otherwise why even try it at all?
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
And by the way, along those lines, so number one, you've taken over 400 days, but the fact is, you know what really kills me too? And I just don't get it. It's like the way they came down on you. You think you indicted the guy for jaywalking. You indicted this guy for first-degree murder.
Absolutely. It's the first time in a history of the police department, Chicago Police Department, that an on-duty officer was charged with first-degree murder in a shooting.
And let's be clear. I want to repeat that. I want to make sure people understood that. Never before has a Chicago police officer ever been indicted for first-degree murder. It's not like she gave the guy a pass. It's not like she gave this guy some kind of little golden get out of jail slip.
Right. Well, I think you're right. It's gotten lost in all of the headlines. And I think, if I wasn't...
I hate to say it, the press is... You just don't... with all due respect to Sally, who's really good, she's not... You're just not a manipulator the way that the other side is.
Well, if I wasn't up for re-election, I don't think I would have as much criticism as I've had, because people have taken advantage of the fact that I am up for re-election. But, I stand firm, and I think the citizens of Cook County understand. They've seen me now for 8 years. I have always been independent. I have never been a political insider. I have run this office professionally because, as you said, I'm a professional prosecutor, and I think sometimes I get the criticism, you hit on it, that, if I were a political insider, you would see me do things for political political reasons, and I haven't done that. I've done what I believe is right, what I believe is just, based on the facts, the evidence, and the law. And sometimes that doesn't sit well with politicians. So, but
Probably most of the time.
probably most of the time. But I feel very strongly that my record running this office and being fair to every community that I serve is strong, and that the voters of Cook County will see through that and have seen through that. I mean, I can't walk down the street without somebody stopping me. It happened just on my way here. A woman walked up to me and she said, "You stand strong." You high-fived me and said, "I understand everything. I don't, agree with what's happening to you," and that's been going on every day since this. But we've done some great things in the office.
Before we get there, I know you want to get there, and we'll let you get there in just one more minute. Okay, when the connection with the Emmanuel thing, and I just want to get to that, and then we'll go to what you've done with the office. You were not you weren't endorsed by a single ward committeeman when you first ran, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I wasn't. I was not.
The fact is that she got, well, in some ways you got lucky because you ran against a whole bunch of men and you were everybody's second choice, and you were the only reasonable person in the race, not, yelling, screaming, and all the rest of it. So she didn't have the support of a single ward committeeman when she first won, and nobody challenged her last time. So even if there was money in part, when you're supported by a party, people don't realize you have to give them a check for the mailing and for this and that and the other thing. It doesn't mean you're tied into them. I mean, and obviously, look, right now there's no connection. She's the first person they want to throw under the bus all the way. So, okay, we are now finished with this topic. We now have 8 minutes to talk about your accomplishments in office.
Oh, okay. But I've done some great things that I'm very proud of since taking over, and some things that I want to continue to do and expand on. One of the things is our community justice centers. I have 4 of them now across the city, but we need more. And we've had some great success up in Alderman Kappelman's ward, cleaning up a strip mall. And the community justice centers are storefront offices in the community where my assistants are assigned. And I have I have administrative people there as well. And it's you can walk right in. If you have an issue, a problem, a question, just walk right in. And our assistants handle cases, from that particular area. They work on specific problems that area might, and every community is different, and what might work up here on the north side may not work on the west, and that sort of thing. But the benefit of having the Community Justice Center, I believe, is that just having that connection to the community, people know who we are. It really helps to, reinvigorate and just kind of mend any kind of confusion that the public may have with my office. We work with the police department, we work with the alderman, we work with everyone that's part of that community groups, religious leaders. We work with them all, and it's nice to have that face in the neighborhood. I tried to get more money in my budget this year to expand, which of course I didn't get, but I will continue to try because I think there's been research done by the University of Chicago that shows that the concept of community prosecution, which those offices are, that it works. And there are certain types of charges of crimes that are actually reduced when you have those community justice centers. So I really want to expand on that as I go along. The other thing that I'm very proud of are my diversion programs. When I took over in 2008. There were only 8 different, and they were really alternative sentencing type programs where judges would have some type of an alternative to send to put someone in a program as opposed to sending them, to jail. Since I took over in 2010, I created my first felony diversion program, and we now have expanded to 30.
Wow.
30 different programs, which give people a second chance. Because I've been a prosecutor now for 29 years, and I've seen the hardened criminals, of course, unfortunately, we've seen them, but we also see, that group of people that make one mistake and they're not going to stay in a life of crime. So what do? They should get a second chance. And so our diversion programs, now we have 30, focusing many of them on first-time offenders. But the latest one that I just developed, which is, I started the misdemeanor aspect in April and the felony in October. And as my drug deferred prosecution program, we're calling it DDPP. So it's, but the focus on the drugs is not first-time offenders. We're focusing on people who have convictions, who we see keep circling back in, coming right back into the system. They'll come, they pick up a possession of controlled substance, they plead guilty, they're in jail for 6 months, and then we see them come right back. So that program was developed for that category of people, to make sure that we can divert them into a program so they can actually do something about their addiction. We're not talking about the big drug dealers. We're talking about the people who really have an addiction. And so it took us over a year to develop that, because we wanted to make sure that we had social service providers that were going to get reimbursed, because unfortunately we know, and you know better than me, how the state is broke. So we wanted to make sure our social service providers would actually get reimbursed to provide the services that people need. So right now we have about 3,500 people on some kind of alternative prosecution program. So that's a lot, and it saves the county money, because these people are not sitting in jail before they get into our program. We have trained our assistants at the bond court level to identify people who would qualify for a program. So the goal for that was, if we identify them at their first introduction to the court system, then get them out, that they're not spending not even 2 weeks in jail, because they're given an I bond, and then they're able to get into a program. So 30 different programs. When I took over, there were only 2 mental health courts. Now we have 7. So we keep expanding, and I intend to expand, because when we see the results, and we see that we have the University of Chicago, we have Loyola University, and the Center for Court Innovation from New York, all are looking at our programs, and they quality control, and they do research. And what they're telling us is that these programs are working, and you need to continue them. So I'm very, very proud of that.
No, I think you should be. I think that's very cool, all these different things that are going on. In the meantime, I'm sure you have a website.
I do.
What is the website?
Well, it's just AnitaAlvarez.com. You can find me, Friends of Anita Alvarez. You can Google that, and we have all, that's for the campaign part. But obviously, we have a website and a Facebook for the state's attorney's office, so you can keep informed of what we're doing as far as Yeah.
By the way, you didn't even mention the human trafficking.
I didn't, and I'm very proud of my human trafficking. Because I created that unit, and it was only one of 3 jurisdictions to get a federal grant to do it.
Anti-human trafficking, just to be clear, guys.
Yeah, because unfortunately that's a crime that people think just happens in a foreign country, and it doesn't happen here, but it happens here. And Chicago ranks number 3 on the human trafficking hotline. Why? Because we're a convention hub, a tourist hub, we've seen our last operation was out of Schiller Park, which is close to the airport. So unfortunately, we've seen girls who were born and raised right here, unfortunately, young girls who are forced into this sex trafficking. And we have become known now as the local prosecutor's office to develop programs for human trafficking. It's become known as the Chicago approach. And my assistants train across the country. I was invited to be an ambassador for Human Rights First, where the whole focus is to tackle the crime of human trafficking. So I'm very proud of that. And my assistants are doing a tremendous job. And it really is something we need to continue to talk about, because everybody, like I said, thinks it happens elsewhere, but it does happen. It happens to girls born and raised right here. And it's very easy for our young children, especially on the internet, because these predators, they watch how these young girls and who they're talking to on the internet, and it's so hard for maybe a 13-year-old girl to somehow get befriended by someone, and the next thing you know, he's meeting her in a parking lot and she's in danger. So we need to make sure we keep talking about it.
Yeah, at this point, we really are out of time. We want to thank you very much, Anita Alvarez.
Thanks,
we hope
Avi.
you'll come back again
Always
before
good
the
to
election.
see you. I will.
My
I will.
pleasure seeing you, and thank you so much for joining us, everybody. And give this election some serious thought, and don't believe everything you read in the papers. Thank you very much, Sonny Hirsch. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.